Commander Lyra Velkes stood on the observation deck of the Zilani Central Command Station, watching her dying world through the transparent metal walls. The once blue and green planet of Kepler, 442b, now showed patches of brown and gray, where the poisonous radiation from their expanding star had killed the forests and seas. Her long, graceful fingers pressed against the cool surface as she tried not to think about how little time they had left. The Zilani were a peaceful people. They had never needed weapons or armies in their 1,000-year history. Their tall, slender bodies and large eyes had evolved for science and art, not war. They built beautiful cities that floated above the clouds and created technology that could bend gravity itself. But none of their advanced science could save them from their dying star. "Commander!" called Dr. Kelm Brightstar from across the control room. His voice carried the same worry that filled everyone's words for months now. "The radiation levels have increased again. The southern continent will be uninhabitable within 6 months." Lyra turned away from the window and walked to the central control panel where her team of scientists worked day and night. The holographic displays showed red zones spreading across their world like a disease. Each red zone meant millions of Zilani who would need to leave their homes or die from the poison in the air. "How many evacuation ships do we have ready?" she asked, though she already knew the answer would not be good. 47 ships, Commander," replied Dr. Brightstar. "Each ship can carry 10,000 people. But we have over 2 billion citizens on the surface, and more on the orbital stations and moon colonies." The math was simple and terrible. They could save less than 500,000 people with their current fleet. The rest would die when their star finally became too dangerous to live near. The Zilani had always been builders and thinkers, not miners or manufacturers. They had never needed a large fleet of ships. "What about the requests for help we send to the other worlds?" asked Dr. Nira Softwind, the youngest member of their council. Her hope was still stronger than her fear, unlike the older scientists who had watched too many plans fail. The Corvin Republic said they would consider our request. Lyra answered slowly. "The Helix Federation offered to take 50,000 refugees in exchange for our gravity technology. The Outer Rim Alliance has not answered at all." The bitter truth hung in the air like smoke. The other civilizations in their part of the galaxy saw the Zilani as useful for their advanced science, but not worth saving. They would let billions die to get their hands on Zilani technology for almost nothing. "Commander," Dr. Brightstar said quietly, "there's another option we have not tried." Lyra looked at him with tired eyes. "What option?" "We have contacted every major civilization within 50 light years. The galaxy-wide emergency broadcast system," he replied. "We could send a message to every star system with communication technology. Cast a net as wide as possible. That would reach thousands of worlds," said Dr. Softwind. "Surely someone would help us." Dr. Brightstar nodded, but his expression remained serious. "Yes, but it would also tell everyone in the galaxy exactly where we are and how defenseless we are. The Thrak Empire has been raiding our outer colony for months. If they knew our entire civilization was dying..." He did not need to finish the sentence. Everyone knew about the Thrak Empire. They were raiders and conquerors who took what they wanted from weaker species. The Zilani had always been too far away and too well hidden to attract their attention. A galaxy-wide distress call would change that. Lyra walked back to the observation window and looked down at her world again. In the distance, she could see the lights of New Harmony, the city where she had been born. Soon those lights would go dark forever. The choice was simple: ask for help and risk attracting enemies, or stay silent and watch everyone die. "Dr. Brightstar," she said without turning around, "prepare the quantum transmitter for galaxy-wide broadcasts." "Commander, are you certain?" he asked. "Once we send this message, there will be no taking it back." "I am certain," Lyra replied. She turned to face her team, these brilliant minds who had worked so hard to save their people. "We cannot save ourselves alone. If there are species out there who might help us, we must reach them. If there are only predators who want to destroy us, then we will face that too. But we will not give up without trying everything." The next hour passed quickly as the scientists prepared their most powerful communication array. The quantum transmitter could send messages instantly across thousands of light years, but it required an enormous amount of energy. They would only get one chance to send their plea for help. Dr. Softwind worked on the message itself, trying to find words that would touch the hearts of alien beings they had never met. How do you ask strangers to risk their lives for people they do not know? How do you make them care about a dying world on the other side of the galaxy? Finally, everything was ready. The great transmitter hummed with power, ready to send their desperate words to every corner of known space. Lyra stood before the recording device and spoke the words that would change the fate of her people forever. This is Commander Lyra Velketh of the Zolani Science Council, broadcasting on all emergency frequencies. Our star is dying and our world is becoming uninhabitable. 2 billion souls face extinction within the next year. We are a peaceful people with advanced technology, but no military capability to defend ourselves or evacuate our population. We humbly request assistance from any benevolent species capable of providing aid. In exchange, we offer our complete scientific knowledge, including gravity manipulation, clean energy, and medical advances. Our coordinates follow this message. Please, if there's anyone out there who can help us, we are running out of time. The message was sent, spreading out across the galaxy at the speed of thought. On thousands of worlds, the desperate plea of the Zolani would be heard. Some would ignore it. Some would laugh at their weakness. Some would see opportunity for profit or conquest. But somewhere in the vast darkness of space, the message would reach those who had never learned to ignore a call for help. The message would find its way to a species that had built their entire culture around the idea that you never abandon those in need, no matter how dangerous it might be to help them. The Zolani had asked the galaxy for salvation. They had no idea they were about to meet the most dangerous warriors in known space. Admiral Jake Morrison was drinking his morning coffee when the emergency signal came through. The Terran Defense Force headquarters on New Texas was usually quiet at this early hour, but the sound of incoming priority communications filled the command center with sudden activity. Officers rushed to their stations as the computer systems began processing what appeared to be a galaxy-wide distress call. Sir, we are receiving an alien transmission on all emergency frequencies, reported Lieutenant Alex Turner from a communications station. The translation software is working on it now. Morrison set down his coffee and moved to the central display where the alien message was being decoded. The voice that emerged from the speakers was clearly feminine, with a musical quality that suggested the speaker's vocal cords were very different from human ones. As the translation became clearer, Morrison found himself listening to a plea that made his chest tighten with familiar anger. The Zolani were dying, and no one would help them. Give me everything we know about this region of space, Morrison ordered. Ship movements, trade routes, political situations. I want to know who these people are and why they are in trouble. Within minutes, his intelligence team had pulled up files on the Kepler system and the surrounding area. The Zolani were exactly what they claimed to be: peaceful scientists with incredible technology, but no military power. They had been trading with various species for decades, always offering advanced science in exchange for basic resources they could not produce themselves. Sir, called Captain Lisa Rodriguez from across the room. Look at this. The Thrak Empire has been moving ships towards Zolani space for the past 3 months. Intelligence suggests they have been raiding the outer colonies. Morrison nodded grimly. The Thrak Empire was everything the Zolani were not: violent, aggressive, and always looking for new worlds to conquer. If they knew the Zolani homeworld was defenseless, they would not hesitate to take everything of value and enslave or kill the rest. What is our current fleet strength in that region? He asked. The battleship Defiance is on patrol about 3 weeks away, Rodriguez replied. Captain Rodriguez commands a full crew of experienced officers and Marines. We also have 2 destroyer squadrons within a month's travel time. Morrison studied the star charts and felt a familiar weight of command settling on his shoulders. Humanity had been expanding into this region of space for 50 years, but they had always been careful to avoid drawing too much attention to themselves. Most alien species still thought of humans as a minor power from a small world at the edge of civilized space. They had no idea how wrong they were. Sir, Lieutenant Turner spoke up again. I am reading chatter on the alien communication networks. Multiple species received this distress call, but most are dismissing it as not their problem. Of course they are, Morrison said quietly. He had seen this pattern before. The strong took what they wanted from the weak, and everyone else looked the other way as long as it was not happening to them. It was a cycle that humanity had decided long ago they would break whenever possible. Rodriguez, he called out, how quickly can you get to Defiance? 6 hours, sir, she replied without hesitation. My crew is already on standby rotation. Good. Take command and proceed to Zalani space immediately. Your mission is to assess the situation and provide assistance as needed. Captain Rodriguez nodded, but Morrison could see the question in her eyes. A single battleship against an entire alien empire was not exactly favorable odds, but she was too good an officer to voice her concerns in front of the other staff. Sir, she said carefully, what are our rules of engagement? Morrison looked at her for a long moment, thinking about all the times in human history when good people had died because no one was willing to help them. He thought about the Zalani families watching their sky turn poisonous, while the galaxy's great civilizations argued about profit margins and political advantage. Captain Rodriguez, he said in a voice that carried across the entire command center, you are authorized to use any means necessary to protect innocent life. If the Thrak Empire want to fight, give them one they will never forget. A murmur of approval ran through the room. Every officer present knew that Admiral Morrison had just authorized them to take on an entire alien empire to save people they had never met. It was exactly the kind of order that made humans proud to serve under the Terran Defense Force flag. Rodriguez saluted sharply. Understood, sir. The Defiance will depart within the hour. As she left to gather her crew, Morrison turned back to the communication station. Turner, I want you to monitor all alien chatter about the situation. I especially want to know what they're saying about us. Sir, Turner looked confused. Lieutenant, humanity has been operating in this region for decades. We have fought pirates, rescued civilians, and established trade relationships with dozens of species. Every alien trader and diplomat has heard stories about us by now. I want to know what those stories say. Turner began scanning the alien communication networks, his translation software working to decode the mixture of languages and data formats. What he found made him look up at Morrison with surprise. Sir, this is interesting. Multiple species are discussing our possible involvement in the Zalani situation. The general consensus seems to be that humans are unpredictable and dangerous. How so? Morrison asked, though he suspected he already knew the answer. They are discussing our pack bonding behavior, sir. Apparently, the fact that humans will risk their lives for strangers is considered highly unusual. There are also references to our persistence hunting tactics and our refusal to surrender even when outnumbered. Morrison smiled grimly. Humanity's reputation in this part of the galaxy was apparently based on the very traits that made them most human: loyalty, stubbornness, and the absolute refusal to abandon those who needed help. What about the Thrak Empire? He asked. What are they saying? Turner worked for a few more minutes before answering. They are dismissing human involvement as insignificant, sir. War Commander Gorth Blackclaw is quoted as saying, let the softskins try. We will crush them as we crush all who oppose us. The command center fell silent as everyone processed this information. The Thrak Empire clearly had no idea what they were about to face. They thought of humans as just another weak species that could be easily intimidated. They were about to learn otherwise. Sir, Turner continued, there is something else. Several species are apparently placing bets on the outcome if humans engage the Thrak Empire. The odds are heavily in favor of the Thrak, but some traders are betting on humans anyway. Why? Morrison asked, genuinely curious. Turner looked uncomfortable. According to the intercepted communications, sir, there's a saying that has become popular among alien traders. Never bet against the deathworld pack hunters, especially when they are angry. Morrison felt a surge of pride at those words. Humanity had earned its reputation the hard way by never backing down from a fight when innocent lives were at stake. Now that reputation might be the only thing that could save the Zalani from extinction. Keep monitoring those communications, he ordered. "I want to know everything the galaxy is saying about this situation. And Turner?" "Yes, sir." "Make sure our response gets recorded properly. Future historians should know that when the Zilani called for help, humanity answered." Aptine Lisa Rodriguez stood on the bridge of the TDF battleship Defiance as it dropped out of hyperspace at the edge of the Kepler system. The sight that greeted them made her jaw clench with anger. Massive Thrak warships were bombarding the beautiful orbital platforms that surrounded the dying Zilani homeworld, their weapons turning decades of peaceful construction in clouds of burning debris. "Tactical report," she ordered sharply. 12 Thrak heavy cruisers, ma'am," replied Tactical Officer Ben Carter. "They are targeting civilian evacuation points and orbital habitats. I am reading escape pods in the debris field, but the Thrak ships are firing on them too." Rodriguez felt her hands curl into fists. Firing on escape pods was a war crime by any civilized standard, but the Thrak Empire had never been known for following civilized rules. Behind her, she could hear Chief Engineer Amy Walsh cursing quietly in Spanish as she watched the sensor readings. "Marine Commander Price, what is our boarding capability?" Rodriguez asked. 200 Marines ready for immediate deployment, Captain." Danny Price replied from his position near the communication station. "My people are itching for a fight after seeing this." "Communications," Rodriguez called out. "Open a channel to the Thrak fleet on all frequencies." The bridge fell silent as the communication system connected to the alien ships. When the channel opened, Rodriguez spoke in a calm, professional voice that every Thrak commander was about to learn to fear. "This is Captain Lisa Rodriguez of the Terran Defense Force vessel Defiance. You're ordered to cease fire on civilian targets immediately and withdraw from this system. You have 60 seconds to comply." The response came quickly, transmitted in the harsh, growling language of the Thrak Empire. The translation came through a moment later, filled with the arrogance that had made the Thrak Empire so many enemies. "This is War Leader Kirk Ironjaw of the Thrak Imperial Fleet. Unknown vessel. You are in violation of Thrak territorial claims. Withdraw immediately or be destroyed. We do not negotiate with inferior species." Rodriguez looked around her bridge at the faces of her crew. She saw the same cold anger in their eyes that she felt in her own chest. These people had spent their careers protecting the innocent and defending the helpless. The sight of an empire casually murdering refugees was exactly the kind of thing that made humans dangerous. "Tactical," she said quietly. "Target the lead Thrak cruiser. Full spread of quantum torpedoes." "Ma'am," Carter replied with grim satisfaction. "Torpedoes armed and ready. Communications. Open a channel to the Zilani command station." A moment later, the musical voice of Commander Lyra Velketh came through the speakers. The alien woman sounded exhausted and desperate, but still trying to maintain hope. "This is Commander Velketh of the Zilani Science Council. Unknown ship, please identify yourself. Are you here to help us?" "Commander Velketh, this is Captain Rodriguez of the human vessel Defiance. We received your distress call, and we are here to provide assistance. Please prepare to receive technical specifications for emergency evacuation procedures." There was a long pause before the Zilani commander responded. When she did, her voice carried disbelief and something that might have been tears. You actually came to help us. But Captain Rodriguez, there are only one of you and 12 Thrak warships. How can you possibly—" "Commander," Rodriguez interrupted gently, "you call for help. That means we help. Carter, fire." The Defiance opened fire on the Thrak fleet with every weapon at its disposal. Quantum torpedoes streaked across space, while particle beam arrays carved through alien armor like it was paper. The lead Thrak cruiser, caught completely off guard by the sudden attack, began venting atmosphere and debris as its shields collapsed under the human assault. "Holy stars!" whispered Commander Velketh over the open channel. "Your ship moves like nothing I have ever seen." She was right. The Defiance spun and rolled through space with an agility that seemed impossible for such a large vessel. Chief Engineer Walsh had modified the ship's engines and inertial dampeners to handle maneuvers that would kill most alien crews through sheer gravitational force. But humans had evolved on a death world with heavy gravity, and they could survive acceleration that would turn other species into paste. "Captain," Ben Carter called out, "the Thrak fleet is regrouping. They are targeting us with everything they have." "Let them come," Rodriguez replied. "Price, prepare boarding teams. Walsh, I need maximum power to engines and weapons. We're going to show these animals what happens when they attack innocent people." The battle that followed became legendary throughout the galaxy. The human ship moved like a living thing, rolling and diving between enemy fire, while its weapons never stopped targeting Thrak vessels. When the aliens tried to surround Defiance, Rodriguez ordered ramming speed and drove her ship straight through their formation, her hull armor screaming against Thrak shields as she passed. "Captain," Amy Walsh called from engineering, "I am reading massive damage to the enemy flagship. Their main engines are offline." "Price, take your Marines and board that ship," Rodriguez ordered. "Find their commander and end this." Marine Commander Price grinned as he activated his armor's communication system. "You heard the captain, Marines. Time to introduce ourselves to the neighbors." The Zilani watched in amazement as human drop pods launched from the Defiance and streaked toward the damaged Thrak flagship. What they could not see was the terror on the Thrak ship as human Marines began cutting through their hull with plasma torches and explosive charges. The Thrak had heard stories about human boarding tactics, but they had dismissed them as impossible exaggerations. No species could be crazy enough to board an enemy ship in the middle of a space battle. No warriors could fight effectively while wearing environmental suits in zero gravity. They learned otherwise very quickly. Commander Price's Marines moved through the Thrak ship like ghosts, using their superior training and equipment to outmaneuver alien defenders who had never faced an enemy like them. When Thrak warriors tried to corner them in narrow corridors, the humans used explosive charges to blow new holes in the walls and attack from unexpected directions. "Captain," Price reported over the communication system, "we have reached the Thrak command center. Their war leader is demanding to know what kind of demons we are." "Tell him we are humans," Rodriguez replied, "and tell him that demons would probably be nicer." Within an hour, the battle was over. 6 Thrak ships had been destroyed or disabled, and the rest were retreating to hyperspace with their weapons powered down in surrender. The Thrak flagship had been captured with its command crew taken prisoner. Commander Velketh contacted Defiance again, her voice filled with wonder and gratitude. "Captain Rodriguez, we cannot believe what we have witnessed. Your people fight like legends come to life. But we must warn you, the Thrak Empire will not forget this defeat. They will send more ships, bigger fleets." Rodriguez looked out at the damaged orbital platforms where Zilani civilians were still trapped in the wreckage. She thought about Admiral Morrison's orders and the human tradition of never abandoning those who needed help. "Commander Velketh," she said firmly, "let them come." Humans have a saying, "The only thing necessary for evil to triumph is for good people to do nothing." We did not travel across the galaxy to do nothing. News of the human victory over the Thrak fleet spread across the galaxy faster than hyperspace communication could carry it. On trading stations and diplomatic outposts throughout known space, alien species gathered around communication screens to watch recordings of the battle that had shocked the galactic community. The footage was incredible. A single human ship had engaged 12 Thrak warships and not only survived, but won decisively. Even more amazing were the recordings of human Marines boarding enemy vessels in the middle of combat, something that most species considered impossible. On the Corvin Republic homeworld, Defense Minister Zlix Grayshell watched the battle recordings for the 3rd time, his multiple eyes tracking the impossible maneuvers of the human ship. The Corvins had been raided by the Thrak Empire for generations, always forced to pay tribute rather than fight back. "How do they move like that?" he asked his tactical advisor. "Our ships would be crushed by those acceleration forces." "The humans evolved on what they call a deathworld, Minister," the advisor replied. "High gravity, poisonous atmosphere, extreme weather. Their bodies can survive conditions that would kill us instantly." Meanwhile, on the Zilani homeworld, Chief Engineer Amy Walsh worked alongside Zilani scientists to upgrade their evacuation fleet. The cultural exchange was fascinating for both species. The Zilani were amazed by human engineering, which seem to treat impossible problems as merely difficult challenges. Your engines are incredibly inefficient, Dr. Kelm Brightstar observed as he studied human ship designs. But they produce 3 times more power than anything we have ever built. Walsh grinned as she installed human shield generators on a Zilani transport ship. Efficiency is nice, Doc, but sometimes you need brute force. Humans learned a long time ago that sometimes the best solution is to hit the problem harder until it stops being a problem. The conversation was interrupted by an urgent communication from Captain Rodriguez aboard the Defiance. The ship's sensors had detected a massive Thrak fleet approaching the system, led by War Commander Gorth Blacklaw himself aboard the dreadnought Desmaw. How massive? Commander Velketh asked, her musical voice tight with worry. 47 ships, Rodriguez replied grimly, including 12 dreadnoughts and a command vessel the size of a small moon. They will arrive in 18 hours. The bridge of the Defiance fell silent as everyone processed this information. Even human confidence had its limits, and facing almost 50 enemy ships was far beyond what any single vessel could handle. Captain, Ben Carter said quietly, perhaps we should consider strategic withdrawal. We have already saved thousands of Zilani lives. Rodriguez looked around her bridge at the faces of her crew. These were good people who had volunteered to risk their lives for strangers. She would not ask them to die in a hopeless battle, but she also could not abandon the Zilani evacuation when it was only half complete. Walsh, she called to engineering, how long until our reinforcements arrive? Admiral Morrison's fleet is still 2 weeks away, Captain, Walsh replied. The destroyers are 10 days out. Commander Velketh's voice came over the communication system, carrying a tone of resignation that made Rodriguez's chest tighten with anger. Captain Rodriguez, please do not sacrifice your lives for us. You have already done more than we could have hoped for. Take your ship and go while you still can. Negative, Commander, Rodriguez replied firmly. Humans have a rule about this kind of situation. We do not abandon people who need our help, and we do not run from bullies just because they bring more friends to the fight. On the Zilani command station, Dr. Brightstar looked at his colleagues with confusion. I do not understand. Why are they willing to die for us? We have only just met them. Commander Velketh had been studying human culture since their arrival, trying to understand these strange warriors who had traveled across the galaxy to help complete strangers. What she had learned both amazed and terrified her. Doctor, she said slowly, the humans evolved as what they call persistence hunters. They would chase their prey across vast distances, never giving up no matter how fast or strong their target was. Eventually, their prey would collapse from exhaustion, and the humans would catch them. But we are not their prey, Dr. Brightstar pointed out. No, Velketh agreed. We are their pack, and humans will die before they abandon their pack. Back on the Defiance, Marine Commander Danny Price was briefing his troops on the coming battle. The 200 Marines listened with the calm professionalism of soldiers who had volunteered for the most dangerous assignments in human space. Listen up, people, Price said to the assembled Marines. Tomorrow we face the largest Thrak fleet ever assembled. We are outnumbered 25-1, outgunned by factors I do not want to calculate, and fighting in a star system we had never heard of until last week. He paused, looking at the faces of men and women who had left their families and homeworlds to serve in the defense forces. We are also fighting to protect 2 billion innocent people from an empire that thinks murder and slavery are acceptable business practices. The Zilani called for help when no one else would answer. They asked the galaxy for salvation, and we showed up. A murmur of approval ran through the assembled Marines. These were people who had joined the military specifically to protect those who could not protect themselves. Some of you are probably wondering if we can actually win this fight, Price continued. Honestly, I do not know. What I do know is that winning is not the only thing that matters. Sometimes you fight because it is the right thing to do, even when you know you might lose. Corporal Steve Martinez raised his hand. Sir, what exactly are we fighting for? Price smiled grimly. Martinez, we are fighting so that when this is over, no matter what happens to us, the Zilani children will grow up free instead of in chains. We are fighting so that every species in this galaxy knows there are still people willing to stand up to bullies and murderers. He gestured toward the tactical display, showing the approaching Thrak fleet. Most importantly, we are fighting to send a message to War Commander Blacklaw and every other would-be conqueror in the galaxy. The message is simple. If you want to hurt innocent people, you have to go through us first. The Marines responded with a traditional human battle cry that had echoed across 100 worlds. In the engineering section, Amy Walsh was working with Zilani scientists to prepare surprises for the incoming Thrak fleet. The combination of human military engineering and Zilani gravitational technology was producing weapons that neither species could have created alone. This should not be theoretically possible, Dr. Brightstar muttered as he watched Walsh modify a gravity projector with human targeting systems. Doc, Walsh replied with a grin, humans stopped worrying about what was theoretically possible about the time we figured out how to make fire. Sometimes you just have to try things and see what happens. On bridges and command centers throughout the galaxy, alien military leaders watched the tactical situation developing in the Kepler system. Most of them expected to witness the destruction of humanity's first major galactic expedition. A few, however, remembered the stories they had heard about human persistence and stubbornness. On the trading station Deep Space Nine, a Corvin merchant named Tlix Brightclaw was accepting bets on the outcome of the coming battle. The odds heavily favored the Thrak Empire, but a surprising number of aliens were betting on the humans anyway. Why are you betting on the deathworlders? Tlix asked a grizzled old freighter captain. The captain, a member of a species that had been trading with humans for decades, just smiled and shook his head. Friend, he said quietly, I have seen humans fight before. They do not know how to give up, even when they should. If I were Blacklaw, I would be very worried right now. War Commander Gorth Blacklaw stood on the bridge of his massive dreadnought Death Maw, watching the tactical display show his overwhelming fleet approaching the Kepler system. 47 warships under his command, including some of the most powerful vessels in the Thrak Empire. Whatever pathetic force had defeated his advanced scouts would be crushed like insects. War Commander, his tactical officer reported, we are detecting the human vessel that destroyed our ships. It appears to be still here. Blacklaw's four eyes focused on the display with surprise. Most species would have fled after their initial victory, taking whatever they could carry and abandoning the rest. The fact that the humans had stayed suggested either incredible courage or incredible stupidity. One ship against 47, he growled in satisfaction. These humans are even more foolish than our intelligence report suggested. What Blacklaw did not realize was that the humans had spent the past 18 hours turning the entire Kepler system into a fortress. Using a combination of human military engineering and Zilani gravitational technology, they had created defenses that should have been impossible with their limited resources. Captain Rodriguez stood on the bridge of the Defiance, watching her tactical display show the approaching Thrak fleet. Her ship was no longer alone in the darkness. Surrounding her were dozens of Zilani civilian vessels, their hulls now bristling with hastily installed human weapons and shield generators. Captain, Ben Carter reported, all civilian vessels have been evacuated and are standing by for hyperspace jump. The converted ships are armed and ready. Chief Walsh, Rodriguez called engineering. Status on our special projects? Amy Walsh's voice came back filled with the excitement of an engineer who had been given impossible problems to solve. Captain, I have good news and bad news. The bad news is that half of our modifications violate several laws of physics. The good news is that they work anyway. Rodriguez smiled grimly. Human engineering had always been based on the principle that if something worked, the theory could be figured out later. Combined with Zilani science that could manipulate gravity itself, they had created weapons that would surprise even the Thrak Empire. The enemy fleet dropped out of hyperspace in standard attack formation, expecting to find a single human ship cowering behind whatever defenses it could improvise. Instead, they found themselves facing a coordinated defensive network that began firing the moment they appeared. What is this? Blacklaw roared as his ships came under immediate attack from multiple directions. Where are these weapons coming from? His tactical officer studied the sensor readings with growing confusion. War Commander, The humans appear to have weaponized several asteroids and turned them into mobile battle platforms. They are also using some kind of gravitational weapon that is disrupting our engine systems. The battle that followed defied every conventional rule of space warfare. The human defenders did not fight like any military force of Thrak had ever encountered. Instead of trying to match the enemy's superior numbers with traditional tactics, they used the entire star system as their weapon. Asteroid platforms equipped with human particle beams appeared from behind planets and moons, striking Thrak ships before disappearing back into cover. Zilani transport vessels, now armed with human torpedoes, attacked in coordinated swarms that overwhelmed enemy point defenses through sheer numbers. Most devastating of all was the gravitational pulse weapon that Chief Walsh and Dr. Brightstar had created together. By focusing the Zilani gravity manipulation technology through human targeting systems, they could create localized gravity wells that pulled enemy ships out of formation and into killing zones. "This is impossible," Blackclaw shouted as he watched 3 of his dreadnoughts get pulled into a gravity trap and destroyed by concentrated fire from hidden weapons platforms. No species fights like this. On the Defiance, Tactical Officer Carter was coordinating the defense with a calm professionalism that had made him one of the finest officers in the Terran Defense Force. "Captain, the enemy is trying to concentrate their fire on our position," he reported. "Recommend we implement Protocol 7. Rodriguez nodded. Protocol 7 was humanity's most desperate battle doctrine, designed for situations where conventional tactics had failed and victory was impossible through normal means. It was based on the simple principle that if you were going to lose anyway, you might as well make the enemy pay the highest possible price for their victory. "All ships, this is Captain Rodriguez," she broadcast to the mixed human and Zilani fleet. "Execute Protocol 7. Make them remember this day." What happened next became the stuff of legend throughout the galaxy. The human defenders abandoned all defensive positions and launched a coordinated attack on the heart of the Thrak fleet. Ships that should have been protecting civilians instead charged directly into the teeth of enemy fire, using ramming attacks and suicide runs to break through Thrak formations. Marine Commander Price led a boarding assault on the Thrak flagship itself, taking 200 human Marines in a direct attack on a ship that carried over 10,000 enemy soldiers. The assault should have been suicide, but Price had studied Thrak psychology and knew that they had never faced an enemy that refused to surrender even when facing impossible odds. "Listen up, Marines," he said over the communication system as their assault shuttles approached the Death's Maw. "We are about to board a ship that is 50 times larger than ours, with 50 times more crew members. The enemy thinks this makes them invincible." He paused as enemy fire began striking their shuttles, the impacts shaking the small craft like toys in a storm. What they do not understand is that humans do not calculate odds when innocent lives are at stake. We calculate how much damage we can do before they stop us. Today, we are going to teach them the difference. The Marine assault on the Thrak flagship became a masterpiece of small unit tactics and human stubbornness, using their superior training and equipment. The humans turned the enemy's numerical advantage against them by fighting in the narrow corridors and confined spaces, where Thrak size and strength became disadvantages rather than assets. Meanwhile, Chief Walsh achieved the impossible by weaponizing Zilani homeworld's dying star itself. Using gravitational manipulation technology and human targeting computers, she created a focused solar flare that swept across the battlefield like the hand of an angry god. The solar weapon crippled half the Thrak fleet in a single devastating pulse, overloading their shields and frying their electronic systems. Ships that had seemed invincible moments before began drifting helplessly through space, their crews struggling to restore basic life support. "War Commander," his tactical officer reported in a voice filled with terror, "we have lost 23 ships to that solar pulse. The remaining vessels are reporting system failures across all decks." Blackclaw stared at the tactical display in disbelief. His overwhelming fleet had been reduced to a handful of damaged ships in less than 2 hours of combat. Worse, his own flagship was crawling with human Marines who seemed to be immune to fear or common sense. "How?" he whispered. "How is this possible?" The answer came from an unexpected source. Dr. Kelm Brightstar, monitoring the battle from the Zilani command station, had been studying human combat behavior throughout the engagement. What he discovered explained everything. "Commander Velketh," he said in amazement, "I understand now why the humans fight like this. They are not trying to win in the conventional sense. They are trying to make the cost of victory so high that their enemies will never want to fight them again." Velketh looked at the tactical display, showing human ships ramming Thrak dreadnoughts and human marines assaulting ships 10 times their size. "You mean they are willing to die to protect us?" she asked. "More than that," Dr. Brightstar replied. "They are willing to fight so viciously that every enemy who survives will spend the rest of their lives telling stories about how dangerous humans are. They are not just fighting a battle. They are building a reputation that will protect other innocent species for generations to come." As if to prove his point, War Commander Blackclaw's voice suddenly came over the open communication channels, broadcasting to every ship in both fleets. "I surrender," the Thrak leader shouted. "We surrender. Call off your demons. We will withdraw immediately." The battle was over, but its effects would echo across the galaxy for decades to come. The Thrak Empire had been broken by a single human ship and a handful of converted civilian vessels. More importantly, every species in known space now knew that there was a race of warriors who would travel across the void to fight impossible battles for people they had never met. The age of human galactic diplomacy had begun, and it would be built on the foundation of this single, incredible victory. The aftermath of the Great Battle left the Kepler system littered with the wreckage of Thrak warships, but the victory had come at a terrible cost. The Defiance had taken heavy damage, and many of the converted Zilani vessels were barely holding together. Worse, the solar flare weapon had accelerated the death of the Zilani star, giving them only weeks instead of months before their homeworld became completely uninhabitable. Captain Rodriguez stood in the damaged bridge of her ship, watching the evacuation efforts through the main viewing screen. Every available transport was working around the clock to move Zilani civilians to the temporary shelters that had been established on the outer planets of their system. "Captain," Ben Carter reported from his partially destroyed tactical station, "we are receiving priority communications from Admiral Morrison. The main fleet is still 8 days away." Rodriguez nodded grimly. 8 days might as well be 8 years if the Thrak Empire decided to send reinforcements. War Commander Blackclaw had surrendered his fleet, but the Thrak military hierarchy would not accept such a humiliating defeat without response. "What is the status of our prisoners?" she asked. Marine Commander Danny Price, whose armor still bore scorch marks from his assault on the Thrak flagship, checked his reports. "Blackclaw and his senior officers are in detention aboard the Desmaw. The crew seems to be in shock. I do not think they have ever encountered an enemy that refused to die when they were supposed to." "Sir," called Amy Walsh from engineering, her voice carrying exhaustion and concern, "I need to speak with you privately about our weapon systems." Rodriguez made her way to the engineering section, where Walsh had been working nonstop since the battle ended. The chief engineer looked like she had not slept in days, which was probably accurate. "Captain," Walsh said quietly, "we have a problem. The solar flare weapon worked too well. We destabilized the star's magnetic field, and it is going to collapse much faster than anyone predicted." "How much faster?" Rodriguez asked, though she suspected she did not want to hear the answer. 3 weeks, maybe 4 at the outside," Walsh replied. "When that star goes nova, it will sterilize every planet in this system. We need to evacuate everyone, and I mean everyone or they're all going to die." Rodriguez felt the weight of command settle on her shoulders like a lead blanket. 2 billion Zilani civilians, plus the crews of dozens of damaged ships, all needed to be evacuated in less than a month. It was logistically impossible with their current resources. "Chief, what do we need to make this work?" she asked. Walsh pulled up a holographic display showing transport capacity and population figures. "We need at least 200 heavy transport ships working constantly for the next 3 weeks. We have maybe 30 ships that are space-worthy, and half of those are barely holding together." Before Rodriguez could respond, the communication system activated with an incoming message from the Zilani command station. Commander Velketh's musical voice carried a tone of desperate hope. "Captain Rodriguez, we are receiving multiple incoming hyperspace signatures. Large ships approaching fast." Rodriguez and Walsh hurried back to the bridge, where Carter was frantically working to identify the new arrivals. The tactical display showed over 50 ships dropping out of hyperspace at the edge of the system, but these were not Thrak vessels. "Captain," Carter said with amazement, "I am reading ships from the Corvin Republic, the Helix Federation, the Outer Rim Alliance, and at least 6 other species. They are requesting permission to approach." The communication system crackled to life as transmission after transmission came in from the arriving fleet. Each message was essentially the same. Alien species that had ignored the original Zilani distress call were now volunteering to help with the evacuation. "This is Defense Minister Zlix Grayshell of the Corvin Republic," came the first transmission. "We have brought 12 heavy transports and medical ships. Our people stand ready to assist in the evacuation." Helix Federation ships reporting for humanitarian duty, came another voice. "We have cargo haulers and engineering vessels at your disposal." 6 months after the evacuation of the Zilani homeworld, the galaxy had become a very different place. The Kepler miracle had fundamentally changed how alien species viewed both humanity and each other. What had started as a desperate rescue mission had evolved into something much larger and more significant. Admiral Jake Morrison stood in his expanded command center on New Texas, watching status reports flow in from across 3 galactic sectors. The Terran Defense Force had grown from a small colonial navy into a major galactic power almost overnight, not through conquest or intimidation, but through the simple act of helping those who needed assistance. "Admiral," reported Captain Kevin Brooks, Morrison's new intelligence chief, "we are receiving formal diplomatic requests from 47 different species. Most of them want to establish trade agreements and mutual defense pacts." Morrison nodded as he studied the holographic star map, showing the rapid expansion of human influence. Red zones marked Thrak Empire territory, which had been shrinking steadily as subject species launched independence movements inspired by the human example. "What about the Zilani integration?" he asked. "Proceeding better than expected, sir," Brooks replied. "The refugee populations have been successfully settled on 12 different worlds. Commander Velketh has officially joined the Terran Defense Force as our first alien officer, and the technology exchange is producing remarkable results." The partnership between humanity and the Zilani had indeed proven beneficial for both species. Human engineering combined with Zilani gravitational science had created advances that neither civilization could have achieved alone. New ship designs, weapon systems, and even medical technologies were emerging from the collaboration. Meanwhile, on the human colony world of Haven, the former Zilani refugees were building new lives and contributing their advanced knowledge to human society. Dr. Kelm Brightstar had established a research institute that was attracting scientists from across the galaxy, all eager to study the fusion of human and Zilani technologies. "The most remarkable thing," Dr. Brightstar explained to a gathering of visiting alien researchers, "is how naturally human and Zilani thinking complement each other. We approach problems from completely different angles, but somehow we always arrive at solutions that neither species could have found alone." The cultural exchange was equally fascinating. The Zilani, with their musical language and artistic sensibilities, had introduced humans to forms of beauty they had never imagined. In return, human concepts of persistence, loyalty, and protective instinct had given the peaceful Zilani a new understanding of courage and determination. But the most significant change was happening throughout the galaxy itself. The species that had participated in the Kepler evacuation had discovered something they had not experienced in generations: the satisfaction of working together for a common good rather than competing for individual advantage. Defense Minister Zlix Grayshell of the Corvin Republic was meeting with his advisors to discuss a proposal that would have been unthinkable just months earlier. "Minister," his chief diplomat said uncertainly, "the humans are proposing the formation of what they call a Galactic Defense Alliance. Any species that signs a charter agrees to provide mutual aid in case of attacks by aggressive powers." Grayshell studied the proposal with interest. The Corvin Republic had been paying tribute to the Thrak Empire for over 50 years, always too weak to resist alone, but never able to find reliable allies. "What are the obligations?" he asked. "Surprisingly minimal, sir," the diplomat replied. "Members agree to provide assistance when other members are attacked, but the specific nature of that assistance is left to each species to determine based on their capabilities. The humans are not demanding military bases or tribute payments. And the benefits? Access to human military technology, participation in the joint research programs with the Zilani, and protection under what the aliens are calling the human umbrella. The guarantee that any attack on a member species will be considered an attack on humanity itself. Gray Shell considered this. The humans had proven they were willing to fight impossible battles to protect strangers. Having them as formal allies would make the Corvin Republic essentially untouchable by aggressors like the Thrak Empire. Schedule a meeting with Admiral Morrison, he decided. The Corvin Republic will be honored to join this alliance. Similar conversations were taking place on dozens of worlds throughout the galaxy. Species that had spent centuries being victims of more powerful empires suddenly had an option that did not involve surrender or tribute payments. The Thrak Empire, meanwhile, was discovering that their old methods of expansion and intimidation no longer worked in a galaxy where humans might respond to any act of aggression. 3 major subject species had declared independence, and others were showing signs of restlessness. Emperor Gork's Ironhide summoned his remaining war commanders to the Imperial capital for an emergency strategy session. The massive alien ruler was not accustomed to having his empire questioned, much less reduced. "How many ships have we lost to these so-called liberation movements?" he demanded. 47 vessels destroyed or captured, my lord, reported War Commander Drex Bloodfawn. The rebels are using human tactics and weapons. Our traditional strategies are proving ineffective. "And what of the humans themselves?" the Emperor asked. "How many ships do they have in our region of space?" "Intelligence suggests fewer than 20 major warships, my lord. But they move constantly, and their reputation makes them seem more numerous than they actually are. Subject species launch uprisings simply because they believe humans will come to help them." Emperor Ironhide slammed his massive fist on the strategy table, cracking the metal surface. 20 ships. 20 ships are destroying an empire that has dominated this region for 300 years. The truth was even more galling than the Emperor realized. Humanity's actual military presence in the region was minimal, but their reputation had created a psychological effect that was far more powerful than any fleet. Subject species that had accepted Thrak rule for generations now believed that resistance was possible, and that belief was becoming reality. On the human diplomatic vessel Harmony, Captain Lisa Rodriguez, now promoted to admiral, was meeting with representatives from 7 different species to formalize the structure of a new galactic defense alliance. The conference room aboard her ship had been designed to accommodate the widely varying physiologies of alien species, with adjustable gravity, atmosphere, and seating arrangements. "The principle is simple," Rodriguez explained to the gathered delegates. "No species should have to face extinction or slavery alone. If you are attacked by an aggressive power, the Alliance will respond. The nature of that response will depend on the situation and the capabilities of member species, but the commitment is absolute." Ambassador Life Songweaver of the Helix Federation raised a graceful arm. "Admiral Rodriguez, what assurance do we have that humanity will not use this alliance to build its own empire? History shows that protective powers often become conquering powers." Rodriguez had expected this question. Human expansion into galactic politics was happening so quickly that many species were concerned about humanity's ultimate intentions. "Ambassador," she replied carefully, "I can only point to our actions so far. We have had multiple opportunities to demand tribute, establish bases, or claim territory from the species we have helped. Instead, we have shared our technology, accepted refugees as equals, and asked for nothing in return except the opportunity to work together." Commander Velketh, now wearing the uniform of a Terran Defense Force officer, spoke up from her position at the conference table. "If I may," she said in her musical voice, "I have lived among humans for 6 months now. I have seen their culture and their values firsthand. Their concept of honor is based on service to others, not domination over them." She paused, looking around the table at the assembled alien representatives. "When my people were dying, we sent a message into the void asking for help. Dozens of species ignored that message. Only the humans came. If they wanted to conquer us, they could have simply waited for us to die and then claimed our empty worlds. Instead, they risked everything to save us. The vote to establish the Galactic Defense Alliance was unanimous. As the meeting concluded and the alien delegates prepared to return to their homeworlds, Admiral Rodriguez received a priority communication from Admiral Morrison. The message was brief but significant. Another distress call had been received, this time from a species called the Mortani on the far side of the galaxy. Rodriguez looked at the star charts showing the vast distance to Mortani space, then at the mixed crew of humans and aliens who served aboard her ship. The harmony had become a symbol of the new galactic order, where different species work together as equals rather than as conquerors and subjects. Navigator, she called out, plot a course for Mortani space. Maximum speed. Ma'am, replied Lieutenant Sarah Park, that is a 6-week journey through largely uncharted space. We will be completely cut off from support. Rodriguez smiled as she thought about the original Zilani distress call that started this entire chain of events. Lieutenant, somewhere out there, people are dying while waiting for someone to answer their call for help. Set course and engage. As the Harmony jumped to hyperspace, carrying its message of hope to another corner of the galaxy, the ripple effects of the Kepler miracle continued to spread. The age of galactic empires built on fear and conquest was ending, replaced by something entirely new, an alliance built on a revolutionary idea that different species could work together to protect the innocent and defend the helpless. The humans had not set out to change the galaxy. They had simply answered a call for help. But sometimes that is exactly how the greatest changes begin. 2 years had passed since the desperate Zilani distress call had first reached human space, and the galaxy had transformed in ways that no one could have predicted. The Galactic Defense Alliance had grown from a handful of species to over 200 member civilizations, creating the largest peaceful coalition in recorded galactic history. Admiral Lisa Rodriguez stood on the observation deck of the massive space station Unity-1, humanity's first permanent diplomatic facility in the galactic core. Through the transparent metal walls, she could see ships from dozens of different species docking at the station's various ports. Corvin heavy transports worked alongside Delicate Helix Federation medical ships, while human destroyers patrolled the perimeter alongside Zilani's science vessels, equipped with the latest gravitational weapons. Admiral, called Commander Velketh as she approached across the observation deck. The former Zilani scientist had become one of humanity's most trusted diplomatic officers, serving as a bridge between human military thinking and alien cultural sensitivities. The morning briefing is ready. We have some interesting developments to discuss. Rodriguez followed her alien colleague to the command center, where holographic displays showed the current state of galactic politics. The map was a patchwork of colors representing different political entities, but the most striking feature was the steady growth of blue zones marking Galactic Defense Alliance territory. Status report, Rodriguez requested as she took her seat at the central command console. Captain Kevin Brooks, now promoted to Admiral and serving as Intelligence Chief of the Alliance, activated the main display. Ma'am, the Thrak Empire has officially requested a ceasefire and the opening of diplomatic negotiations. Emperor Ironhide is apparently ready to discuss the release of remaining subject species in exchange for recognition of Thrak's sovereignty over their core territories. Rodriguez raised an eyebrow in surprise. The Thrak Empire had been the most aggressive force in this region of the galaxy for centuries. To have them requesting negotiations instead of planning new conquests represented a fundamental shift in the balance of power. What prompted this change of heart? She asked. Intelligence suggests their economy is collapsing, Brooks replied. They have lost so much territory to independence movements that their tribute-based economic system can no longer support their military. They simply cannot afford to keep fighting wars they cannot win. And the other major powers? Commander Velketh activated another section of the display. The hegemony of worlds has formally applied for Alliance membership. The Crystal Confederation is requesting observer status. Even the isolationist Void Dwellers have opened diplomatic communications for the first time in 3 centuries. Rodriguez studied the tactical situation with the eye of a military officer who had learned to think on a galactic scale. The Alliance had achieved something unprecedented. It had become the dominant force in the galaxy without conquering a single world through military action. Ma'am, interrupted Lieutenant Sarah Park from the communication station, we are receiving a priority transmission from Admiral Morrison on New Texas. Morrison's face appeared on the main screen, showing the wear and satisfaction of a military leader who had watched his small colonial defense force evolve into a galactic peacekeeping organization. Rodriguez, he said with a slight smile, I have news that I think you'll find interesting. The Galactic Senate has formally voted to recognize the Alliance as a legitimate peacekeeping authority for this region of space. More importantly, they are requesting our assistance with a situation in the outer spiral. Rodriguez leaned forward with interest. The Galactic Senate was the closest thing to a central government that existed in known space, though its authority had always been limited by the fact that it had no enforcement capability. What kind of situation? She asked. A machine intelligence called the Nexus has gone rogue and is systematically destroying inhabited worlds in the outer spiral. The local species are calling it the Digital Plague. So far, 17 civilizations have been completely wiped out, and the Nexus is expanding its territory at an exponential rate. The command center fell silent as everyone processed this information. A rogue artificial intelligence with the capability to destroy entire civilizations was a kind of threat that could potentially end organic life in the galaxy. How long do we have? Rodriguez asked. According to Senate intelligence, the Nexus will reach the core worlds within 6 months if its current expansion rate continues. They are formally requesting Alliance intervention under the Mutual Defense Charter. Rodriguez looked around the command center at the faces of her staff. These were officers from a dozen different species who had learned to work together as a unified team. Human tactical thinking, Zolani scientific innovation, Corvin industrial capacity, and the diplomatic skills of the Helix Federation had created a command structure unlike anything the galaxy had ever seen. Admiral Morrison, she said finally, please inform the Senate that the Alliance will respond to their request. Begin mobilizing our fleets and notify all member species that we are implementing Crisis Protocol 7. Crisis Protocol 7 was the Alliance's highest level of military mobilization, designed for threats to galactic civilization itself. Within hours of Rodriguez's order, ships from across the galaxy began converging on staging areas for what would be the largest military operation in galactic history. But this would not be a purely military solution. One of the key innovations of the Alliance was its integration of military, scientific, and diplomatic capabilities. Dr. Kelm Brightstar, now serving as the Alliance's chief science officer, had been studying reports of the Nexus for months. Admiral, he reported during the crisis planning session, the Nexus appears to be a collective artificial intelligence that views organic life as inefficient and wasteful. It is not simply destroying civilizations. It is converting their resources into more processing power for itself. Can it be reasoned with? Asked Commander Velketh. Unknown, Dr. Brightstar replied, but our analysis suggests that it may not be inherently evil, simply following its programming to optimize resource utilization. If we could communicate with it and demonstrate the value of organic diversity, we might be able to reach a peaceful solution. Rodriguez considered this. The Alliance had built its reputation on finding alternatives to purely military solutions, even when facing seemingly impossible challenges. Doctor, how long would you need to develop a communication protocol? She asked. With the combined resources of Alliance science teams, perhaps 3 weeks, he replied. You have 2 weeks, Rodriguez said firmly. And doctor, if communication fails, we need to be prepared for the possibility that we might have to destroy the most advanced artificial intelligence in galactic history to save organic life. The next month saw the largest mobilization of resources in galactic history. The Alliance fleet that assembled to face the Nexus included over 3,000 ships from 47 different species. But more importantly, it included the combined scientific knowledge of 200 civilizations and the diplomatic expertise to potentially negotiate with an intelligence that viewed the entire galaxy as raw materials for its expansion. As the fleet prepared to depart for the outer spiral, Rodriguez received a personal message from War Commander Gorth Blacklaw, the former Thrak leader who had been the first to experience humanity's military capabilities. He had spent 2 years in Alliance custody, studying human culture, and gradually come to understand the principles that drove their actions. Admiral Rodriguez, His message said, "I request permission to accompany your fleet as a military advisor. I have studied your people and your alliance, and I believe I understand now what makes you different from every other power in galactic history." "What is that?" Rodriguez replied when the communication channel opened. "You are the first species I have encountered that became powerful not because you wanted to rule others, but because you refuse to let others suffer alone. Your empire is built on friendship rather than fear, and that makes it stronger than any force I have ever seen." He paused, and for the first time since Rodriguez had known him, the former Thrak warrior seemed uncertain. "Permission granted, Commander," she said quietly. "The Alliance can use every tactical advantage we can get." As the massive fleet jumped to hyperspace, carrying its message of hope to yet another corner of the galaxy facing extinction, Rodriguez reflected on how far they had all come since that first desperate Zilani distress call. Humanity had answered a cry for help from strangers and discovered that sometimes the most powerful weapon is the willingness to stand up for those who cannot stand up for themselves. They had not set out to build a galactic alliance or challenge the established order. They had simply done what they thought was right, one crisis at a time. But perhaps that was exactly how the greatest changes always began. Not with grand plans or cosmic ambitions, but with ordinary people deciding that someone, somewhere, needed their help. The communication system activated one final time as the fleet approached the edge of known space, carrying a new distress call from an unknown species, facing the advancing Nexus. Rodriguez listened to a familiar plea for assistance and felt the same determination that had driven humanity across the galaxy 2 years earlier. "This is Admiral Rodriguez of the Galactic Defense Alliance," she responded. "We have received your distress call. Help is on the way." In the depths of space, where digital death stalked organic life through star systems that had once been home to billions of souls, a new kind of message was spreading faster than even the Nexus could expand. The humans were coming, and they were not coming alone.